History is not the steady march of progress we assume it to be. The story of innovation is filled with forgotten chapters, and the technology you think defines our modern world often has ancient blueprints. This video will take you through 30 ancient inventions we thought were modern discoveries, completely rewriting your timeline of human ingenuity. You will see how our ancestors mastered concepts from electricity to computing, revealing a legacy of brilliance that rivals our own. We will uncover the steam engine that powered a temple wonder centuries before the Industrial Revolution, and examine the corroded bronze device considered the world's first computer. By the end, your understanding of where innovation truly begins will be transformed. How much of what we consider new is actually a rediscovery of lost knowledge. This idea of linear progress is perhaps our greatest historical blind spot. We envision history as a steady climb upward, each generation building on the last, but this tidy narrative collapses under the weight of evidence. The truth is far more chaotic and fascinating. Knowledge, once brilliant and widespread, can flicker out like a forgotten flame. Entire libraries burn. Trade routes that carried ideas fall silent. A society might turn its focus from engineering to philosophy, or a vital resource might simply run dry, leaving a groundbreaking technology to gather dust. The period often labeled the Dark Ages in Europe is a stark example, where the intricate concrete formulas of Rome or the advanced astronomical models of the Greeks faded from common use. Yet, during that same era, scholars in the Islamic world were meticulously translating and expanding upon those very texts, while inventors in China and India were pushing the boundaries of metallurgy and mathematics. This reveals a crucial truth. Innovation is not a relay race with a single baton passed forward. It is a sprawling, global conversation, with voices rising and falling, sometimes going silent for centuries before another culture rediscovers the tune. Our journey through these 30 inventions begins by shedding that bias of inevitable progress. We start not with a tool of war or industry, but with one of pure, ingenious comfort, an invention that powered an empire's leisure and reshaped social life, the monumental Roman aqueduct. That conversation of innovation echoes in the whirring of a simple sphere from ancient Alexandria. In the 1st century AD, a Greek engineer and mathematician named Hero crafted a device that seems to have leapt from a later age. He called it an Aeolipile. Picture a hollow metal sphere mounted between two pipes over a boiling kettle. As steam rushed up through those pipes and into the sphere, it would escape through two bent nozzles on opposite sides. The force of the escaping steam jets would cause the entire sphere to spin, a mesmerizing, whirling dance of metal and vapor. This was, in every functional sense, a working steam engine. Hero's brilliant device converted the thermal energy of boiling water into rotational motion, a core principle that would power the entire Industrial Revolution some 1700 years later. Yet in Hero's world, the Aeolipile was not seen as a tool for industry or transportation. It was a temple wonder, a philosophical toy, a demonstration of physical principles for the learned scholars of the museum. It powered nothing but curiosity. This presents one of history's most tantalizing what-ifs. The knowledge was there, the mechanical genius was evident, but the social and economic conditions to harness it for widespread practical use simply did not align. The Aeolipile stands as a monument not to a failure of invention, but to a divergence in application. It whispers that the timeline of technology is not fixed, that a breakthrough can lie dormant for centuries, waiting for the right moment or the right question to be asked again. This pattern of a sophisticated idea appearing far ahead of its practical time is not unique. From the realm of philosophical toys, we now turn to a corroded lump of bronze pulled from a shipwreck. an object so mechanically complex that it forced historians to rewrite their understanding of ancient Greek science. That corroded lump of bronze from the seafloor held a secret far greater than anyone could have guessed. In the year 1900, sponge divers off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera discovered a Roman-era shipwreck, a treasure trove of statues and artifacts. Among the finds was an unassuming, calcified lump about the size of a large book. For decades, it sat in a museum, a curious but indecipherable relic. It was only when researchers began to peer inside using advanced imaging technology that the true marvel was revealed. This was no simple ornament. It was a clockwork universe in a box, a device of staggering genius now known as the Antikythera mechanism. Dating to around 100 years before the Common Era, it consists of at least 30 intricate bronze gears, precisely interlocked and housed within a wooden case. Inscriptions on its face and back panels served as a user's manual for the cosmos. By turning a hand crank on the side, an ancient scholar could set the device in motion. The gears would spin, and pointers would move across dials to predict the positions of the sun, the moon, and likely the 5 known planets. It could forecast solar and lunar eclipses with remarkable accuracy, and one of its dials even tracked the 4-year cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. This was not merely a calculator, it was a dynamic, mechanical model of the heavens as the Greeks understood them. The sophistication of its miniaturized gearing, including a differential gear, a component essential in modern car axles, would not be matched in complexity in Europe until the astronomical clocks of the 14th century. The Antikythera mechanism forces a complete re-evaluation of ancient technological capability. It shatters the persistent myth that ancient thinkers had only a philosophical or simplistic view of the cosmos. They did not just observe the stars, they built machines to simulate them, to calculate their movements, and to bring the orderly mechanics of the universe into their hands. This device represents a pinnacle of knowledge that was, like the steam engine, tragically lost. The ship that carried it sank, and the mind that conceived it left no known heirs to its craft for over a millennium. From a machine that calculated celestial power, we turn to an invention that aimed to harness a far more tangible and immediate force, one that flickered in the skies and promised a different kind of illumination. The promise of that celestial machine was built on observation, but another ancient discovery hints at a mastery of invisible forces. In the 1930s, during excavations near Baghdad, workers uncovered a set of peculiar objects that seemed utterly out of place. They were simple in construction, a small clay jar roughly 5 inches tall, containing a rolled copper sheet that formed a cylinder. Suspended inside this cylinder by an asphalt plug was a solid iron rod. To a modern eye, the configuration is unmistakable. If you filled that jar with an acidic liquid, something as common as vinegar or fermented grape juice, you would create a basic galvanic cell. The copper and iron, immersed in the electrolyte, would generate a small but measurable electric current, around 1 volt. This artifact, known as the Baghdad battery, dates from the Parthian or Sasanian period, sometime between 250 years before the Common Era and 250 years after. Its existence shatters our conventional timeline for the discovery of electricity. For centuries, we credited Alessandro Volta with inventing the first true battery in the year 1800. Yet here, over a millennium and a half earlier, was a functional electrochemical device. The great mystery is not whether it could produce electricity, but why it was made. What was its purpose? Scholars have proposed several compelling theories. Some suggest it was used for electroplating, a process where a thin layer of gold or silver is transferred onto another metal using an electric current. Small, gilded artifacts from the same period and region show workmanship that could align with such a technique. Others propose a more mystical application, where the mild shock from multiple jars linked together might have been used in religious ceremonies or healing rituals, creating a tangible, mysterious sensation for temple visitors. The truth may never be fully known, but the implication is profound. Whether for craft or ceremony, someone in ancient Mesopotamia understood the fundamental principle of generating electricity through a chemical reaction. It was not a theoretical concept, but a practical, contained technology. This small clay jar forces us to ask how many other subtle applications of forgotten science are hidden in plain sight, their purpose obscured by time. It suggests that the spark of discovery has flickered independently across ages, only to be dimmed and then brilliantly reignited. From this quiet hum of ancient current, we move to a field where precision was not just about curiosity, but a matter of life, health, and extraordinary skill. The mastery of such invisible forces required tools of immense precision, a principle understood with startling clarity in the field of ancient medicine. While the Baghdad battery hints at a subtle science, another civilization was wielding instruments of iron and intellect to perform what we would consider modern surgical miracles. In the fertile plains of the Indian subcontinent, around 600 years before the Common Era, a physician named Sushruta compiled a text of extraordinary depth. The Sushruta Samhita is not a simple collection of remedies, it is a comprehensive surgical encyclopedia. Within its pages, Sushruta describes over 120 distinct surgical instruments, each crafted for a specific and delicate purpose. The inventory is breathtakingly familiar: scalpels of various shapes and sharpness for precise incisions, forceps for grasping and extracting, probes for exploration, and even speculums for examining body cavities. These were not crude implements of bone or sharpened stone. They were sophisticated tools forged from iron, designed with an ergonomic understanding that would not be out of place in an 18th century operating theater. But the true genius lies in their application. Sushruta documented complex procedures with a methodical, step-by-step approach that emphasized cleanliness, anatomy, and post-operative care. He described the removal of cataracts by couching, a technique where the clouded lens is displaced within the eye to restore vision. Even more remarkably, he detailed intricate methods of plastic surgery, particularly rhinoplasty, the reconstruction of the nose. This procedure was developed to restore the features of individuals who had suffered the loss of their nose, often as a result of judicial punishment or injury in conflict. Sushruta's technique, which involved taking a flap of skin from the patient's cheek or forehead and grafting it skillfully into place, formed the foundational principles for reconstructive surgery that Western medicine would only begin to replicate in the late 18th century. This was not guesswork, it was a highly developed empirical science born from systematic observation, practiced dissection, and a profound commitment to healing. The Sushruta Samhita completely dispels the notion of ancient medicine as a realm of mere superstition or simple herbology. It reveals a parallel timeline of medical sophistication, where a structured, instrument-based approach to the human body was not a future discovery, but a present reality over 2.5 millennia ago. This systematic drive to organize and apply knowledge to bring order to complex systems found another profound expression not in the realm of the body, but in the architecture of information itself. That systematic drive to heal the human body required a parallel system to organize the knowledge itself, a challenge met with breathtaking ambition in the city of Alexandria. While Sushruta's work catalogued the intricacies of anatomy, the librarians of the Great Library of Alexandria undertook an even grander project. They sought to catalogue the entire known world of thought. This was not merely a warehouse for scrolls, it was the ancient world's first true hub of information science. Under the guidance of scholars like Callimachus in the 3rd century before the Common Era, the library developed a revolutionary tool called the Pinax, which translates to tables. Imagine walking into a repository containing hundreds of thousands of papyrus rolls, a chaotic sea of knowledge on every subject from astronomy to zoology. The Pinax brought order to this chaos. It was a massive, multi-volume reference work that acted as a comprehensive catalogue and bibliography for the library's entire collection. Callimachus and his team did not just list titles, they systematically classified works by genre, by author, and within each author's entry, they listed all of their known works. They included biographical details about the authors and critical commentary, effectively creating the first known scholarly database. This was a radical leap from simply storing information to making it retrievable and usable. A scholar from Athens or Rome could consult the Pinax to discover everything the library held on medicine, or find every known play by a certain tragedian. The organizational framework they pioneered, this drive to tag, sort, and cross-reference vast amounts of data, is the direct intellectual precursor to modern library science, search engines, and digital database management. It reveals an ancient understanding that knowledge is only powerful if it can be found, a principle that defines our own information age. The great library's legacy is not just in the scrolls it lost, but in the system it invented to make sense of them all. This ancient impulse to structure our world extended from the organization of ideas to the very fabrication of new materials, leading to an object that feels impossibly out of time. The architecture of information required a physical foundation of equal permanence, a material that could defy the centuries. While modern concrete crumbles in saltwater within decades, the Romans built harbors that have stood strong for over 2,000 years. The secret lies not in a lost magic, but in a forgotten recipe. Roman engineers perfected a material called opus cementitium, a concrete that used a special ingredient, volcanic ash from the region of Pozzuoli, known as pozzolana. When mixed with lime and seawater, this ash triggered a complex chemical reaction that created a crystalline structure of exceptional strength. Unlike modern Portland cement, which cracks and erodes as seawater seeps in, Roman concrete actually improves in the marine environment. The saltwater slowly reacts with the pozzolana and lime to form new minerals that fill any micro-cracks, giving the material a remarkable self-healing property. The Roman harbor at Caesarea Maritima, for instance, was constructed directly in the turbulent Mediterranean, and its concrete breakwaters remain largely intact today, while modern counterparts nearby have required constant and costly repair. This ancient formula was a pinnacle of material science, a product of meticulous empirical testing and local resourcefulness. Yet, with the administrative collapse of the Roman Empire, the precise knowledge of how to source and mix these ingredients faded. The recipe was not merely forgotten, it was abandoned for over a millennium, until modern chemists and engineers in the 20th century began using advanced microscopes to unravel its nanostructure. We are only now beginning to grasp the full genius of their method, actively trying to reverse engineer this ancient technology to create more durable and sustainable modern infrastructure. It is a humbling lesson. A civilization's most enduring legacy might be the very stuff it walked upon, a silent testament to an understanding we are still struggling to regain. That same drive for precise, enduring measurement, so evident in their concrete, found another profound expression in a device designed not to mark space but to master time. Mastering time was the next great challenge for those ancient engineers. In the bustling intellectual heart of 3rd century BC Alexandria, a brilliant inventor named Ctesibius turned his mind to a persistent problem, the unreliable flow of the water clock. Simple clepsydras had been used for centuries, but they were frustratingly imprecise. As the water level in the supply vessel dropped, the pressure decreased, causing the flow to slow down and the timekeeping to drift. Ctesibius saw this not as a limitation but as a puzzle to be solved with mechanics. His revolutionary design introduced a paradigm of self-regulation. He used a clever system of overflow and a float valve to maintain a constant water level in the supply tank, which in turn guaranteed a perfectly steady stream into the measuring vessel below. But his genius did not stop there. He connected the rising float in the measuring vessel to a rack and pinion gear system, which turned a pointer to indicate the hour on a dial. Some accounts even suggest he added elaborate automata, like moving figurines or sounding trumpets on the hour. This was not just a timekeeper, it was the world's first known feedback control system. The device automatically adjusted its own state to maintain a desired condition, constant flow, a principle that is the bedrock of every modern automated system, from a thermostat regulating your home's temperature to the cruise control in your car and the flight control systems of an aircraft. Ctesibius had essentially built a mechanical brain, one that could observe a variable and correct for error without human intervention. It proves that the dream of automation, of creating machines that can self-regulate, is not a child of the Silicon Age, but a very ancient aspiration born from water, bronze, and sheer ingenuity. That same drive to extend human capability, to push into realms of darkness and depth, would soon manifest in a tool that allowed explorers to literally breathe underwater. The dream of automation gave humanity control over time, but true exploration demanded mastery over space, especially the trackless expanse of the open sea. For the Vikings, whose legendary voyages stretched from the shores of North America to the rivers of the East, navigation was not a matter of convenience but survival. Under the perpetually overcast skies of the North Atlantic, with the sun hidden for days or merely a faint glow on the horizon, how did they know which way to sail? The answer lies not in a complex machine, but in a simple, brilliant stone. Norse sagas speak of a mysterious solarstein, a sunstone, used to find the sun's position even when it was completely obscured. For centuries, this was dismissed as mere legend, a poetic metaphor. Then, in the late 20th century, researchers realized the sagas were describing a very real application of optical physics. The sunstone was almost certainly a piece of Iceland spar, a perfectly transparent calcite crystal. This crystal possesses a remarkable property called birefringence, or double refraction. When a beam of light passes through it, the crystal splits the light into two separate rays. By looking through the stone and rotating it slowly, a skilled navigator could pinpoint the direction of the sun, even through dense cloud cover or during the twilight of the polar summer. They would hold the crystal up to the sky and turn it until the two beams of light merging through it achieved an equal brightness, a process that reveals the polarization pattern of the sky, which is always symmetrical around the sun. This gave them a fixed celestial reference point, allowing them to maintain their course with astonishing accuracy long before the magnetic compass became common in Europe. It was a tool of pure empirical genius, using a gift from the earth to read the hidden patterns in the sky. This application of natural mineralogy for advanced navigation rewrites our understanding of Viking capability, showing they were not just fierce raiders, but sophisticated scientists of their environment. Their voyages connected worlds, and the need to record and share the knowledge gained from such journeys would soon ignite another revolution, one that moved from navigating seas of water to navigating seas of information. That Viking sunstone guided ships through invisible paths, but to rule a continent, you needed to make those paths tangible and absolute. The Persian Empire, at its zenith under Darius I in the 5th century before the Common Era, was an administrative marvel stretching from the Aegean Sea to the Indus Valley. Governing such a vast and diverse realm required more than just armies. It demanded the swift, reliable flow of information. The solution was an infrastructure project of breathtaking scale and foresight, the Royal Road. This was not merely a well-maintained dirt path. It was a meticulously engineered highway spanning over 1,500 miles from the capital of Susa to the city of Sardis near the coast of modern Turkey. What made it revolutionary was the system that ran upon it. Darius established a state-run relay of mounted couriers, the Angarium. At regular intervals along the road, way stations were built with fresh horses and dedicated riders waiting at the ready. A courier would arrive from the previous station, transfer his official satchel to the next waiting rider, who would then mount a fresh horse and gallop to the next stop. This relay method meant the message moved continuously, day and night, without delay for the rider's rest. The Greek historian Herodotus, in awe of this system, wrote the famous words that would later be inscribed on New York's Central Post Office. Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. A message could travel the entire length of the empire in about 7 days, a speed that would not be consistently matched in Europe until the 19th century. This was the ancient world's internet, a hardwired network for data transmission that bound a sprawling empire together, allowing for rapid military deployment, efficient tax collection, and consistent legal administration. It represents one of humanity's first conscious recognitions that communication is the true foundation of power, and that investing in the infrastructure for that communication is the ultimate strategic priority. The Royal Road was a physical manifestation of a networked mind, proving that long before digital packets, information moved fastest on the backs of horses and the will of an emperor. To govern such a network, however, required more than just roads. It required the ability to precisely measure the very land those roads crossed. Precise measurement of that vast empire's roads was not left to guesswork. The need to know exact distances for taxation, for troop movements, and for the very mapping of the realm drove the creation of a remarkably sophisticated mechanical device. In the 1st century before the Common Era, the Roman architect and engineer Vitruvius described in his writings a tool used by surveyors. It was an odometer, a machine mounted on a chariot that could measure distances traveled with astonishing accuracy. As the chariot's wheel turned, it engaged a complex series of reduction gears. After a specific number of rotations, corresponding to exactly 1 Roman mile, the final gear would complete a full turn and tilt a mechanism that released a single pebble into a metal bin. At the end of a journey, the surveyor simply counted the pebbles to know precisely how many miles they had covered. This was not a Roman monopoly on the idea. Across the world during the same period in Han Dynasty China, historical texts describe an almost identical device known as the jili guch, or road measuring drum carriage. It employed the same brilliant gearwork principle, dropping a small wooden figurine or a pebble into a drum after each Chinese li, a standard unit of distance. The simultaneous, independent invention of this tool speaks to a universal human need in expanding empires, to quantify the world, to turn the abstract passage of a journey into a concrete, countable number. These were not toys for the curious, but essential instruments of statecraft and engineering. They allowed for the accurate charting of roads, the fair assessment of taxes based on travel distance for goods, and the creation of reliable maps that could be shared and standardized across a bureaucracy. The ancient odometer embodies a profound shift from simply traveling the land to actively measuring, and thereby mastering it through data, a principle that underpins every modern logistics network and digital map we use today. This mechanical precision in surveying the Earth naturally led to even grander ambitions, to not just measure the land, but to fundamentally reshape it for human ambition. Reshaping the land for human ambition required a profound understanding of the land's own restless power. In the year 132, at the court of the Han Dynasty in China, a scholar and inventor named Heng presented the emperor with a magnificent object. It was a large, ornate bronze vessel, nearly 6 feet across, adorned with 8 dragons whose heads pointed in the cardinal and intercardinal directions. Below each dragon sat a bronze frog with its mouth open, waiting. The beauty of the device, however, was secondary to its terrifying purpose. This was the world's first seismoscope, designed to detect the tremors of distant earthquakes. Inside the vessel, Zhang had ingeniously suspended a heavy inverted pendulum. When seismic waves from a quake hundreds of miles away reached the capital, they would cause this central pendulum to swing, even if the movement was too subtle for human senses to notice. The swing would trigger a clever lever mechanism inside one of the 8 dragon heads, causing it to open its jaws and release a heavy bronze ball. The ball would clatter into the mouth of the waiting frog below, producing a loud sound and clearly indicating the direction from which the earthquake had originated. According to court records, on one occasion the device triggered with a ball dropping from the dragon facing west, though no tremor was felt in the capital. Days later, a messenger arrived from a province far to the west reporting a devastating earthquake, confirming the instrument's astonishing accuracy. Zhang Heng's seismoscope was not magic, it was a brilliant application of early physics and mechanical engineering. It transformed an invisible, mysterious, and frightening natural force into a measurable, directional event. This represents one of humanity's earliest attempts to systematically monitor natural disasters, to gather data about them, and to move from superstitious fear toward scientific understanding. It was a precursor to the modern seismograph, born from the same desire to listen to the quiet whispers of the earth before it roars. While Zhang Heng's device listened for the earth's groans, another ancient innovation sought to answer a more personal and universal need, providing comfort in a way that feels distinctly modern. The desire for comfort in the home drove Roman engineering to master the very air itself. In the villas of the wealthy and the grand public thermae that served as social hubs, a remarkable system called the Hypocaust provided a level of domestic warmth that would not be seen again in Europe for over 1,000 years. The principle was elegant in its efficiency. A wood-fired furnace, the prefurnium, was stoked in a service room, often by enslaved laborers. This furnace did not simply heat a single room, it powered an entire building's climate. The hot gases and air it produced were channeled into a void beneath the floor, which was raised on short pillars of brick or stone called pilli. From there, the heat would rise naturally through hollow box tiles embedded within the walls, creating a radiant warmth that permeated both the floors and the walls themselves. The result was a consistently cozy environment, free from the drafts, smoke, and uneven heat of open fireplaces. This was not a luxury in the modern sense. It was a foundational technology for Roman daily life and public health, making the ritual of the bath a warm, communal experience even in the depths of winter. Yet, with the administrative and economic collapse of the Western Roman Empire, the knowledge and resources required to build and maintain these sophisticated systems gradually faded. The Hypocaust fell into disuse, and for centuries European interiors returned to being damp, smoky, and bitterly cold for much of the year, a stark regression in living standards. It was a loss of comfort so profound it is etched into the very bones of medieval castles. The technology would only be rediscovered and adapted during the Renaissance, evolving slowly into the modern underfloor and central heating systems we take for granted today. The Roman Hypocaust stands as a quiet testament to a simple truth, that the quality of our daily environment is a direct measure of a civilization's applied ingenuity. This mastery of environmental control was not limited to creating warmth, however. In some of the hottest climates on Earth, ancient cultures developed an equally clever answer to the opposite challenge, proving that comfort was a pursuit for all seasons. While the Romans mastered the art of heating, the ancient Persians perfected its opposite, creating coolness in the heart of the desert. Scattered across the arid landscapes of Iran stand mysterious, beehive-shaped structures of mud brick, some towering over 60 feet high. These are the Yakhchāls, the ancient Persian ice houses, and they are marvels of passive thermodynamic engineering. In a climate where summer temperatures could soar, the ability to preserve food and create cool drinks was not a luxury, it was a cornerstone of civilization. The Yakhchāl's design was a masterclass in working with nature, not against it. Its thick, domed walls, made from a special heat-resistant mortar called saruj, provided superb insulation against the blazing sun. But the true genius lay beneath the surface. Deep underground, connected to the structure, was a large subterranean storage pit. During the cold winter nights, Persians would channel water from nearby qanats, the underground aqueducts, into shallow, shaded pools. The water would freeze overnight. This ice, or in some methods, ice actually made by exposing water to the clear, cold night sky, was then harvested, broken into blocks, and hauled down into the Yakhchāl's deep pit. The structure's tall, conical shape wasn't just for show. It often acted as a thermal chimney, helping to vent any warmer air upward and away from the stored ice below. Some designs even incorporated badgers, the iconic windcatcher towers, to funnel cool breezes down into the storage chambers, enhancing evaporative cooling. The result was a natural refrigerator that could keep ice solid and perishables fresh throughout the scorching summer months. This was sustainable technology in its purest form, using only architecture, water, and the daily cycle of temperature to solve a fundamental human need. It demonstrates an intuitive yet profound grasp of physics, of heat transfer and insulation, that allowed a society to thrive in an environment that seemed inherently hostile to preservation. From this grand architectural solution for community sustenance, we turn to a far more personal and intimate artifact, one that speaks to the universal human desire for cleanliness and presentation. The same ingenuity that built desert refrigerators was applied to the smallest details of daily life. Among the most humble yet enduring artifacts of the Roman world is the fibula, a simple metal clasp we would instantly recognize today as the safety pin. This was not a crude prototype but a perfected design. Crafted from bronze or iron, a Roman fibula featured a coiled spring at one end, a sharp point at the other, and most importantly, a secure clasp to cover that point once it had pierced through fabric. It was a masterpiece of practical engineering in miniature, solving multiple problems at once. It fastened garments like cloaks and tunics securely. It prevented the sharp end from snagging or causing injury, and its spring mechanism allowed for easy fastening and removal. The design was so effective, so perfectly suited to its purpose, that it saw continuous use throughout the Roman Empire and beyond, persisting for well over 1,000 years with almost no alteration. It would not be invented again until an American mechanic named Walter Hunt patented his version in 1849, seeking to pay off a small debt. Hunt's design, with its familiar coiled spring and protective clasp, is functionally identical to the Roman fibula, a direct echo across 2 millennia. This tiny object is a powerful testament to a profound truth in the history of innovation. Some solutions are so elegant, so fundamentally right, that they are discovered once and then never truly improved upon, only forgotten and rediscovered. The safety pin tells us that ancient brilliance often resides not in the monumental, but in the mundane objects that made everyday life functional and secure. And just as they perfected the art of fastening their clothes, our ancestors applied similar thoughtful design to the intimate ritual of personal care, ensuring that a bright smile was not a modern invention either. A bright smile was a priority long before the age of modern advertising. Among the personal artifacts of ancient Egypt, archaeologists have found recipes for a substance that served the same purpose as our toothpaste, dating back an astonishing 5,000 years before the Common Era. These early dental pastes were not simple abrasives, but complex formulations designed for both cleaning and comfort. A typical recipe might combine crushed rock salt, dried mint leaves, grains of pepper, and the dried petals of iris flowers, all mixed into a paste. The mint and iris provided a fresh scent and likely had mild antiseptic properties, while the pepper may have stimulated the gums. This reveals a sophisticated, empirical understanding of oral care that went far beyond mere cosmetic concern. The Romans, too, had their versions, often using crushed bones and oyster shells as the abrasive element, sometimes flavored with charcoal or bark. In ancient India, Ayurvedic texts detailed numerous herbal tooth powders, known as dantamanjanam, incorporating ingredients like neem, banyan root, and acacia, prized for their astringent and cleaning qualities. These were not random experiments, but the result of centuries of observation and refinement. They prove that the human desire for fresh breath, clean teeth, and healthy gums is a universal constant, and the concept of a specialized compound to achieve it is one of our oldest and most enduring inventions. It shows that our ancestors were not just concerned with survival, but with the daily rituals of well-being and social presentation, applying the same thoughtful innovation to their personal care as they did to their architecture. Managing the resources for such a civilization, however, required a far grander and more fundamental kind of ingenuity, one that turned the desert itself into a source of life. The pursuit of personal comfort and convenience found perhaps its most delightfully modern expression in the temples of 1st century Alexandria. There, among his many wonders, the engineer Hero designed a device that would feel perfectly at home in a subway station or airport lounge today. It was an automatic vending machine. A visitor to the temple would drop a 5-drachma bronze coin into a slot at the top of a sealed box. The coin would fall onto a small, delicately balanced pan attached to a lever. The weight of the coin would tilt the pan downward, pulling the lever, which in turn would open a valve. A precise measure of holy water would then flow from a hidden reservoir into a waiting cup below. Once the coin slid off the pan, the lever would reset, the valve would snap shut, and the machine was ready for the next pious customer. This was not just a clever trick. It was a fully realized system of automation for commerce, combining currency detection, mechanical actuation, and measured dispensing in one self-contained unit. Hero's invention solved a very practical temple problem, ensuring a fair exchange for a sacred commodity without requiring a priest to be constantly present at the basin. It embodies the same core principles that govern every modern vending machine, from soda cans to snacks, proving that the impulse to automate a simple transaction is an ancient one. The brilliance lies in its elegant translation of value, a coin's weight, into a controlled action, a flow of liquid. This mechanical intermediary, this removal of the human vendor from the immediate point of sale, represents a profound step in the story of commerce. It suggests that even 2,000 years ago, innovators were thinking about how to make exchange more efficient, more consistent, and strangely enough, more impersonal. The success of such automated systems, however, relied entirely on a foundation of trust in the value of the coin itself, a value that was about to be standardized in a way that would bind continents. That coin in Hero's vending machine represented something far more revolutionary than the water it bought. In the 7th century before the Common Era, along the banks of the Pactolus River in the Kingdom of Lydia, a fundamental shift in human society was being minted. The Lydians, a wealthy trading power in what is now Turkey, produced the first state-issued standardized coinage, the stater. These were not mere lumps of precious metal, but carefully crafted discs of electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver, each bearing an official stamp, often a lion's head. This stamp was not decoration, it was a royal guarantee. It certified the coin's precise weight and purity, eliminating the need for merchants to carry scales and testing stones to every transaction. For the first time, value was divorced from the immediate, tangible assessment of a commodity. A coin's worth was now embedded in the trust and authority of the kingdom that issued it. This was the birth of true money as we understand it, a portable, uniform, and universally accepted medium of exchange. It transformed economies from cumbersome systems of barter into fluid networks of commerce, enabling complex trade, taxation, and the accumulation of abstract wealth. The Lydian stater became the bedrock upon which the vast economic systems of the Persian, Greek, and Roman empires were built, and its core principle, a trusted symbol standing in for real value, echoes in every banknote and digital transaction in our world today. It was an invention that changed not just what we trade, but how we think about value itself. And with this new, portable wealth, people gained something equally precious, leisure time, which they filled with spectacles of wonder and narrative, powered by an ancient form of immersive entertainment technology. The terrifying spectacle of Greek fire was a closely guarded state secret of the Byzantine Empire. First deployed in the 7th century, this incendiary weapon was not just a simple burning liquid. Its exact formula, known only to a select few, has been lost to time, though historians suggest it likely involved a crude petroleum distillate mixed with resins and other compounds to create a sticky, viscous substance. The true genius, however, lay not just in the chemistry but in the delivery system. Byzantine warships were outfitted with pressurized bronze siphons, tubes mounted on their prows that functioned like giant bellows or pumps. Operators would heat the mixture in sealed cauldrons and then, using these siphons, project a roaring stream of liquid fire across the water toward enemy vessels. The most horrifying property was its defiance of nature. It ignited on contact with water and could not be extinguished by it, creating an inescapable inferno that clung to wooden hulls and sails. This was more than a weapon. It was a complete psychological and tactical system, an early and devastating form of naval chemical warfare that secured Byzantine naval dominance for centuries. Its legacy is a sobering one, foreshadowing the development of modern flamethrowers and incendiary munitions. It reminds us that the drive to innovate is not always channeled toward comfort or art, but can also be harnessed for defense and, tragically, for inflicting immense hardship. This duality of ancient engineering is stark. The same minds that devised automated temple wonders could also create instruments of profound conflict. Yet, that same inventive spirit was also tirelessly applied to the opposite challenge, not to destroy with fire, but to sustain life with water, leading to one of the most elegant and enduring feats of hydraulic engineering the world has ever seen. The same ingenuity that created instruments of war was also tirelessly applied to the opposite challenge, to sustain life with water. In the 3rd century before the Common Era, the legendary Greek mathematician and inventor Archimedes was presented with a seemingly impossible task. King Hiero II of Syracuse needed a way to remove bilge water from the hull of a massive ship, the Syracusia, a vessel so large it was said to be a floating palace. The solution Archimedes devised was a masterpiece of elegant simplicity, a device that now bears his name. The Archimedes screw is nothing more than a large screw or helical surface encased tightly within a hollow cylinder. When one end is placed in a pool of water and the entire assembly is tilted upward and rotated, the turning motion catches water in the pockets between the screw and the cylinder wall, lifting it steadily upward as the screw turns. It is a continuous, gentle, and remarkably efficient pump, capable of moving large volumes of water or even granular materials like grain with minimal effort. Its genius lies in its perfect marriage of profound geometry and brute practicality. Archimedes understood that the inclined plane, one of the simple machines, could be wrapped into a spiral to create continuous motion. This invention was immediately put to work, not just draining ships, but transforming agriculture by lifting water from rivers and canals to irrigate fields at a higher elevation. Its design was so perfectly optimized that it has never really been improved upon, only replicated with modern materials. Today, you can find Archimedes screws in wastewater treatment plants where they gently lift raw sewage, in agricultural machinery, and even in some modern fish ladders, helping salmon navigate past dams with the same gentle, rotating motion conceived over 2,000 years ago. It is a quiet, persistent technology, a testament to the power of a single beautiful idea to outlast empires. While the screw lifted water to nourish the land, another ancient innovation would soon lift the human gaze, offering a window into a world of detail so fine it was once entirely invisible. The same principles that could lift water could also bend light, bringing the hidden details of the world into startling focus. In the ruins of the ancient Assyrian palace at Nimrud, archaeologists uncovered a small, unassuming object that seems to defy its own timeline. It is a piece of rock crystal, carefully ground and polished into an oval shape, dating to around 750 to 710 years before the Common Era. Today, it is known as the Nimrud lens. When held at the correct distance, this ancient artifact can magnify small objects, and its convex shape is also capable of concentrating rays of sunlight into a bright, hot point. Its existence is a quiet revolution in our understanding of optical history. For centuries, we traced the invention of corrective lenses and complex optical instruments to the workshops of 13th century Italy, with the telescope and microscope emerging in the 17th century. Yet here, over 2 millennia earlier, was a crafted lens. The great debate among scholars is not whether it works, but why it was made. Was it a magnifying glass for a meticulous artisan or scribe, used for fine engraving work or to examine tiny cuneiform script? Could it have been a burning glass, a tool for starting fires or for some ceremonial purpose? Some have even speculated, though it remains a fringe theory, that it could have been part of a primitive optical device, perhaps a simple telescope used for astronomy or surveying. While evidence for a full Assyrian telescope is scant, the lens itself is undeniable proof. It demonstrates that the fundamental art of grinding and polishing crystal into a precise optical shape, and an empirical understanding of how that shape could manipulate light, was known in the ancient world. The Nimrud lens is a solitary, brilliant data point, suggesting a path of inquiry that was perhaps not fully pursued or whose records were lost. It tells us that the desire to see more clearly, to magnify the minute or to harness the sun's rays, is an impulse as old as civilization itself. This mastery of optics to enhance human vision was one thing, but to traverse the trackless ocean required a different kind of sight altogether, a way to see direction when all visible landmarks had vanished beneath the horizon. The Nimrud lens offered a glimpse of the minute, but to chart a course across the vast and empty sea required a model of the cosmos itself. This need was met by one of the most elegant and enduring analog computers ever created, the Astrolabe. Its story is a perfect echo of our theme, a brilliant idea born in one era, perfected in another, and lost to common knowledge in a third. The core concept originated in ancient Greece, with thinkers like Hypocaust developing the theory of stereographic projection, a way to map the three-dimensional dome of the sky onto a two-dimensional plate. But it was the scholars of the Islamic Golden Age, from the 8th to the 14th centuries, who transformed this theory into a breathtakingly precise physical instrument. A typical astrolabe was a work of art in polished brass, a disc about the size of a saucer, packed with intricate engravings. At its heart was a stack of interchangeable plates, each etched with a web of lines representing the horizon and celestial coordinates for a specific latitude. Over these plates rotated a fretted star chart called the reter, a skeletal map of the brightest stars. By holding the device by its ring, suspending it vertically, and sighting the sun or a star through its alidade, a rotating pointer, a user could measure its altitude above the horizon. Once that measurement was taken, the real magic began. By rotating the rete over the appropriate latitude plate, the entire sky for that moment was modeled before them. It could tell the time, day or night. It could determine the direction of prayer. It could calculate the rising and setting times of stars and planets, and even solve complex trigonometric problems related to surveying. For navigators, a mariner's astrolabe, a heavier, simplified version, was indispensable for finding latitude at sea by measuring the height of the sun at noon. This was not a single-purpose tool. It was a portable observatory, a universal calculator, and a cosmic clock, all held in one's hand. It remained the premier instrument for understanding the heavens for nearly 1,000 years, a bridge between the philosophical sky of the Greeks and the empirical, mathematically precise universe of the Renaissance. Its legacy is embedded in the very language of navigation and in the design of modern planispheres and even some aspects of celestial navigation software. The astrolabe represents a pinnacle of pre-digital computation, proving that complexity and utility could be beautifully encoded in brass and geometry. This mastery of materials and chemical processes extended far beyond crafting instruments of brass, however, into the very alchemy of creating vibrant, lasting color that would define an empire's visual legacy. The beauty of the astrolabe's brass was matched only by the lethal elegance of a blade forged in a different crucible of knowledge. For centuries, the warriors and nobility of the Middle East and Europe prized a weapon of mythic status, the Damascus sword. These blades were said to be so sharp they could slice a silk scarf floating on air, and so flexible they could be bent into a half-circle without breaking. Their most distinctive feature was a mesmerizing, watery pattern on the surface, like rippling silk or wood grain. This was not mere decoration. It was the signature of a material science so advanced it would not be fully decoded until the age of the electron microscope. The source of this legendary steel lay not in Syria, but in ancient India, where from at least 300 years before the Common Era, smiths produced ingots known as wootz steel. The process was a marvel of controlled chemistry. Iron ore was combined with precise amounts of carbon-rich material, like wood or leaves, in a sealed clay crucible. This crucible was then heated in a charcoal furnace for days at a carefully regulated temperature, allowing the iron to absorb the carbon slowly and evenly, transforming into a high-carbon steel of exceptional purity. The ingots produced with their characteristic mottled surface were then traded westward to centers like Damascus, where master smiths would forge them into blades. The real magic happened during this forging as the smith repeatedly heated, folded, and hammered the metal. This painstaking work distributed microscopic structures, primarily cementite, in layered patterns that became the visible waves on the finished sword. But the true shock came in the 1990s, when materials scientists examined samples of ancient wootz steel under high-resolution transmission electron microscopes. They found carbon nanotubes, tiny, incredibly strong cylindrical structures of carbon, embedded within the steel matrix. These nanotubes, a material at the forefront of modern nanotechnology, were self-assembled through the ancient crucible and forging process. This means the smiths of antiquity, through empirical mastery of temperature and composition, were inadvertently engineering materials at the nanoscale, producing a composite structure that gave the blades their legendary combination of hardness and resilience. This knowledge, a perfect blend of art and unknowing nanoengineering, faded with the decline of the trade routes and the specific social systems that supported such specialized craft. We are only now, with our most advanced tools, beginning to reverse engineer the secrets they held in their hands and hammers, a profound lesson in how much subtle, material genius can be lost when a single thread of tradition is broken. From the supreme strength of folded steel, we turn to a material defined by its beautiful flexibility, one that would wrap the world in communication. The legendary strength of Damascus steel was a secret written in carbon, but the story of ideas needed a far lighter and more forgiving page. That revolutionary surface emerged in the Han Dynasty court of China, around 100 years before the Common Era, through the work of a court official named Kai Lun. Before his innovation, writing was a heavy affair, literally. It was etched onto bamboo slats that were cumbersome to store and transport, or inscribed on expensive silk, or written on papyrus, which was brittle and limited to regions where the reed grew. Kai Lun's breakthrough was a new recipe and process. He took readily available materials like mulberry bark, old rags, hemp waste, and even fishing nets, and broke them down through soaking, pounding, and boiling into a pulpy slurry. This fibrous soup was then poured onto a flat, porous screen where the water could drain away, leaving behind a thin, interwoven mat of fibers. Once pressed and dried, this mat became a sheet of true paper. It was not a mere surface for writing, it was a democratization of knowledge. Compared to bamboo or silk, paper was remarkably lightweight, strong, flexible, and crucially, inexpensive to produce in large quantities. It could be folded, bound into books, and transported with ease. This single invention supercharged Chinese bureaucracy, scholarship, and art, creating a portable medium that allowed ideas to travel farther and faster than ever before. The technology was a closely guarded state secret for centuries, but like all great ideas, it could not be contained forever. It spread slowly along the Silk Road, reaching the Islamic world by the 8th century, where it fueled the scholarly explosion of the Golden Age, and finally arriving in Europe by the 12th century. There, it would provide the essential physical foundation for Gutenberg's printing press centuries later, igniting the European Renaissance and the scientific revolution. Kai Lun's humble pulp transformed the very architecture of human thought, proving that the most profound revolutions often begin with something as simple as a better way to make a blank page. This principle of thoughtful, foundational design extended from the page to the very layout of cities, where ancient planners demonstrated a foresight that puts many modern metropolises to shame. That ancient impulse for order and public welfare found its most enduring expression in the very layout of civilization itself. While the Romans mastered infrastructure, another culture, over 2,000 years earlier, had already perfected the blueprint for the modern city. In the fertile floodplains of the Indus River, around 2,500 years before the Common Era, the people of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa built metropolises that would astonish an urban planner today. These cities were not organic clusters of huts that grew haphazardly over time. They were conceived and executed as complete, rational systems. Streets were laid out in a precise north-south and east-west grid, intersecting at perfect right angles to form uniform city blocks. The bricks used for construction, both sun-dried and fired, were standardized to a consistent ratio, making building efficient and predictable. But the true genius was hidden beneath the streets. An extensive, covered drainage system ran throughout the city, with individual homes connected to main sewers via brick-lined channels. These drains were designed with inspection holes for maintenance, and they carried wastewater away from residential areas to designated disposal sites. This was not a luxury for the elite, it was a municipal standard. The cities also featured large, centralized public baths, like the famous Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro, suggesting a community-wide value placed on ritual cleanliness and social gathering. This comprehensive approach, prioritizing order, sanitation, public health, and civic space, represents a quantum leap in social organization. It is the direct intellectual ancestor of the grid plans that define cities from New York to Barcelona, and of the modern principles of urban planning that seek to manage traffic, waste, and public welfare. The Indus Valley civilization demonstrates that the dream of a rationally designed, functional, and healthy city is not a product of the Enlightenment or the Industrial Age, but a very ancient human aspiration, one that was fully realized and then mysteriously forgotten for millennia. This meticulous scheduling of civic life, the division of the day into orderly blocks, required a personal technology to keep the individual in sync with the system's rhythm. The meticulous scheduling of civic life demanded a personal technology to keep pace. For the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, the disciplined rhythm of the day was paramount, and he employed a clever device to enforce it. In his famed academy, Plato is said to have used a modified water clock, or clepsydra, with a brilliant twist. As water steadily dripped from one vessel into another, it would eventually fill a sealed chamber containing an air tube. The rising water would compress the air inside, forcing it out through a narrow whistle. After a precisely measured interval, the device would emit a sharp, kettle-like shriek. This was not to wake him from sleep, but to signal the exact, unwavering start time for his lectures, ensuring his students adhered to a strict schedule. This simple mechanism represents the conceptual birth of the alarm clock. It transformed time from a passive flow into an active, auditory command, a tool for personal and institutional regimentation. The desire to segment the day, to impose human order upon the sun's arc for the sake of productivity and learning, is a profoundly ancient impulse. Plato's whistling water clock is a direct philosophical ancestor to the intricate mechanical alarm clocks of the 18th century and the pervasive digital alarms that structure our modern lives. It proves that the anxiety over punctuality, the drive to optimize our hours, is not a symptom of the industrial age, but a very old human preoccupation with mastering time itself. This ancient concern for order and well-being extended from the personal schedule to the health of the entire community, leading to a public innovation that addressed a fundamental human need with elegant simplicity. Plato's alarm clock regimented the mind, but the health of the city itself depended on a far more foundational kind of order. The grand, gridded streets of the Indus Valley cities, like Mohenjo-Daro, were underpinned by a hidden network of even greater genius. Running beneath those orderly blocks was one of the world's first comprehensive urban sewer systems. Homes were connected to covered, brick-lined drains that channeled wastewater away from living spaces and into larger underground conduits. These drains were designed with slopes for gravity flow and featured removable brick covers for maintenance, a clear indication this was a planned municipal responsibility. This was not a piecemeal solution, but a conscious, large-scale investment in public health, designed to remove waste and standing water that could lead to illness. 1,000 miles and 2 millennia later, the Romans would take this concept to a monumental scale with the Cloaca Maxima, the Great Sewer. Beginning as an open channel in the 6th century before the Common Era, it was later vaulted over and expanded into a massive underground canal that drained the Roman Forum and surrounding hills into the Tiber River. The Roman approach was systematic and hydraulic. They understood the need for a steady flow of water to keep these channels clean, often channeling overflow from aqueducts or public fountains to flush through the latrines and bath complexes. Public latrines featured long marble benches with keyhole-shaped seats over a constantly flowing channel of fresh water, with sponges on sticks provided for cleaning. This integration of water supply, waste removal, and public architecture reveals a profound understanding of the link between sanitation and urban livability. The collapse of Roman administrative power led to a tragic regression in Europe, where for centuries waste was often simply tossed into streets or local waterways, contributing to repeated public health challenges. The sophisticated, centralized sanitation of Rome and the Indus Valley would not be widely re-established in European cities until the 19th century. This ancient foresight underscores a timeless principle that a civilization's greatness can be measured not only by its monuments, but by the hidden infrastructure that protects the well-being of its people. And just as they monitored the health of their cities, some ancient cultures turned that same analytical focus inward, tracking the fitness of the human body itself. Physical fitness was a pillar of ancient society, codified long before the modern treadmill. In the heart of every major Greek city-state stood the gymnasium, far more than a simple open field. It was a dedicated, purpose-built institution for the systematic training of the body and mind. These complexes featured specialized areas for different disciplines, a running track, spaces for wrestling, and equipment like halters, stone or lead weights used for the long jump to increase momentum and distance. Discus throwing and javelin practice were also core activities, each designed to develop specific muscle groups, coordination, and explosive power. This was not casual recreation. It was a structured regimen aimed at producing ideal citizens, warriors, and athletes for the sacred Olympic Games. The Romans, ever practical, adopted and adapted this Greek ideal. Their version of strength training often involved the harpastum, a small, hard ball filled with sand. Soldiers would pass and carry this weighted ball in drills, building grip strength, endurance, and teamwork in a single, efficient exercise. This institutionalization of exercise, this deliberate creation of spaces and tools for physical betterment, is the direct philosophical and architectural ancestor of today's global gym culture. The gymnasium was the first fitness center, and the harpastum was an ancient medicine ball. They reveal a profound ancient understanding that a healthy body was essential for a functioning society, whether for the glory of competition or the strength of the legion, establishing a principle of proactive wellness that we have simply commercialized on a mass scale. This empirical, hands-on approach to manipulating the physical world naturally extended from shaping the body to transforming the very substances that surrounded it. The systematic approach to physical training mirrored a deeper, more transformative science of matter itself. In the shadowy workshops of ancient Alexandria, a different kind of alchemy was taking shape, one that sought not just to strengthen the body, but to purify the very essence of substances. The foundational process of distillation, the separation of liquids through boiling and condensation, was not born in a modern laboratory. Its earliest clear descriptions come from the work of Greek alchemists in the 1st century, who used simple equipment to capture the vapors of heated liquids. But it was the scholars of the Islamic Golden Age, particularly the 8th century polymath Jabir ibn Hayyan, who refined and perfected the apparatus that would become iconic, the alembic. This elegant device consisted of 3 main parts: a heated flask called the cucurbit where the liquid was boiled, a domed head where the vapors rose and condensed, and a coiled tube, the ambix, where the purified liquid dripped down into a receiving flask. The genius of the alembic was its mastery of phase change. It allowed alchemists to capture the spirit of a substance, the volatile essence that rose with the steam. This was not merely philosophical, it was profoundly practical. Islamic chemists used these stills to produce concentrated acids, essential oils for perfumes, and purified medicinal alcohols like rosewater, which became staples of pharmacology and daily life. They understood they were isolating the active, potent principles within plants and other materials. This apparatus represents the birth of true chemical engineering, the physical manipulation of matter at its most fundamental level to create new, purified products. Every modern distillation column in a petroleum refinery, every pharmaceutical plant producing pure solvents, and every craft distillery making spirits operates on the exact same physical principle, first harnessed by those ancient scholars with their glass and fire. The alembic transformed curiosity into a repeatable, scalable process, proving that the desire to break nature down into its pure components is a driver of innovation as old as civilization itself. And just as this technology allowed sailors to carry medicinal spirits, another crucial maritime invention would soon allow them to find their way when every star was hidden. The alembic's mastery of fire and vapor was a science of the hidden, but to guide a ship home required a beacon that could pierce the open night. Rising from the small island of Pharos in the harbor of Alexandria, a structure was built that would define the very concept of a navigational aid for all time. Commissioned by Ptolemy I around 280 years before the Common Era, the Lighthouse of Alexandria was more than a tower. It was a statement of intellectual and commercial ambition. Soaring to a height estimated between 350 and 400 feet, it was one of the tallest human-made structures in the world for centuries. Its design was a layered masterpiece of engineering with a massive square base, an octagonal middle section, and a cylindrical top crowned by a statue, likely of Poseidon or Zeus. But its true genius was not in its height alone. It was in the brilliant technology housed at its summit. Ancient accounts describe a great furnace that burned through the night, but the light was not left to scatter weakly into the darkness. It was focused and projected by a massive, polished bronze mirror. This mirror, possibly parabolic in shape, would capture the fire's glow and reflect it into a concentrated beam that could be seen from an astonishing distance. Some sources claim up to 30 miles out to sea. This transformed the lighthouse from a simple marker into an active, powerful tool. It provided a fixed, unmistakable point of reference in a featureless sea, guiding trading vessels safely into the richest port in the Mediterranean. The Pharos was not merely a wonder for tourists, it was a critical piece of civic infrastructure, a state investment in the safety of commerce and the lives of sailors. It established the fundamental blueprint for every lighthouse and aerial beacon that followed, from the coast of Dover to the shores of the modern world, proving that the impulse to light the way, to reduce peril through deliberate engineering, is a cornerstone of maritime civilization. This monumental achievement in guiding physical journeys brings us to our final, and perhaps most intimate, ancient innovation, one that guided a different kind of journey entirely. That final, monumental light guided ships through the dark, but to guide a machine through a complex task required a different kind of illumination entirely. Our 30th and final invention is not a physical object, but a conceptual blueprint, the very idea of a computer program. We often trace the programmable machine to Joseph Marie Jacquard and his revolutionary loom of 1804, which used a chain of punched cards to automatically control the weaving of intricate patterns. Each hole in the card dictated whether a specific thread should be raised or lowered, a binary instruction of absence or presence. But the philosophical seed of this idea, the notion that a machine's actions could be predetermined by a sequence of encoded physical commands, flickers in the ancient world long before the textile mills of France. Consider the legendary automated theaters of the Hellenistic period, like those described by Hero of Alexandria. His staged plays, powered by weights, ropes, and rotating drums, performed a precise sequence of events, doors opening, figures moving, sounds erupting, all triggered by the mechanical progression of a central axle. The sequence was hardwired into the drum's pegs and lengths of cord, a physical program. Even more intriguing are the complex water clocks of the era, like the Tower of the Winds in Athens, which may have used elaborate gear trains and levers to not only tell time but to signal different hours with different sounds or displays. The arrangement of the gears themselves formed a fixed set of instructions the machine would follow as water flowed through it. This is the profound conceptual leap, the understanding that a machine could be more than a simple tool. It could be an executor of logic, following a pre-arranged script written not in words but in the geometry of its own components. The punch card was simply a more flexible, interchangeable medium for that script. It transformed the fixed program carved into a drum into a library of programs encoded on cards, allowing one machine to produce an infinite variety of outcomes based on the instructions fed into it. This is the direct intellectual lineage that leads to Charles Babbage's analytical engine and the very software that runs our world today. Every line of code, every digital command, is a spiritual descendant of those pegged drums and threaded chords, a realization that the true power of a machine lies not in its strength, but in its ability to follow a plan. Having journeyed through these 30 marvels from concrete to code, a pressing question remains. Why does such brilliant, transformative knowledge so often fade into silence, only to be painfully rediscovered centuries or even millennia later? The disappearance is rarely a single catastrophe, but a slow unraveling. Sometimes it is the collapse of the social and economic systems that supported the specialization. The master smith who knows the secret fold of Damascus steel needs apprentices, a stable market for his blades, and a reliable supply of exotic ingots. If trade routes shift or war scatters his patrons, that nuanced craft can vanish within a generation. Other times, knowledge becomes too centralized, held too closely by a priestly class or imperial court. The formula for Greek fire died with the last few Byzantine engineers who guarded it. When the library of Alexandria burned, it was not just scrolls that were lost, but the curated, organized system of knowledge itself, the context that gave facts their meaning. There is also the simple, sobering force of cultural shift. A society may turn its collective energy from engineering marvels to spiritual pursuits, or a new technology, while less advanced in one way, might be cheaper or easier to use, leading to the abandonment of a superior but more complex method. The Roman Hypocaust gave way to the simple fireplace not because it was better, but because it was all a fractured, poorer society could maintain. Each loss is a reminder that progress is not a river flowing inevitably forward. It is more like a garden requiring constant tending. It needs education to pass on the seeds, stable institutions to protect the soil, and a culture that values the slow work of cultivation over the quick harvest. The legacy of these 30 ancient inventions is not merely a list of curiosities. It is a profound lesson in humility. It asks us to look at our own dazzling world, our artificial intelligence and quantum computers, and to wonder, what fragile brilliance are we building today? What essential knowledge have we encoded in systems so complex that only a handful truly understand them? The past whispers that our technological zenith is never guaranteed. It is a story written not in stone but in sand, and it is only by remembering the lost chapters that we learn how to write our own with a little more permanence. These cycles of loss and rediscovery form a recurring pattern in human history, a rhythm of brilliance and silence we might call the Great Forgetting. It is rarely a single, dramatic event that extinguishes a technology, but a slow, complex unraveling of the very fabric that supported it. The collapse of an empire is one of the most potent forces. When the administrative machinery of Rome fractured, the intricate networks that supplied pozzolana ash for concrete, trained engineers to maintain aqueducts, and funded the public baths that used hypocaust systems all dissolved. The knowledge did not vanish overnight, but the specialized economy that made its application possible did. A master craftsman could still remember his grandfather's techniques, but without a state commissioning new harbors or a wealthy patron building a villa with underfloor heating, there was no reason to teach his son. The technology became a memory, then a legend, then nothing at all. Centralized repositories of knowledge are particularly vulnerable to this unraveling. The burning of the Library of Alexandria is the most famous symbol, but the loss was far more profound than the destruction of scrolls. It was the annihilation of a system. The Pinax, that great catalogue, turned to ash, the context that linked one idea to another, the commentary that explained an obscure formula, the collected works of a single thinker gathered in one place, all were gone. This type of loss severs the conversation between generations. A later scholar might find a single, surviving manuscript describing Heron's steam engine, but without the supporting texts on metallurgy, physics, and the other applications being explored in Alexandria at the time, it would seem an isolated curiosity, a philosophical toy with no obvious path forward. The library's fate reminds us that knowledge is not just data, it is a network, and when the hubs of that network are destroyed, the connections are lost, leaving scattered, orphaned ideas that are much harder to understand and rebuild. Sometimes the shift is not violent but cultural. A society's focus can turn inward from practical engineering to spiritual or philosophical contemplation. The exquisite gearwork of the Antikythera mechanism required a worldview that saw the cosmos as a mathematically ordered, mechanical system. If a culture's intellectual energy later shifts toward more mystical or theological interpretations of the heavens, the drive to build such intricate physical models can fade. The machines stop being made, the craft of cutting such tiny, precise gears is no longer taught, and the very mindset that conceived of the device becomes a historical artifact itself. The technology becomes a dead end, not because it was flawed, but because the questions being asked by society changed. Perhaps the most fragile thread of all is the secret held in a single mind. For centuries, the formula for Greek fire or the exact forging ritual for a Damascus blade was transmitted orally from master to apprentice, a protected tradition. This method preserves nuance and guards against rivals, but it is terrifyingly fragile. If the master dies unexpectedly, if the apprentice flees or chooses a different path, if war or plague disrupts the chain, the secret vanishes forever. It becomes a ghost in the historical record, a description of a wondrous effect with no instructions for its creation. This dependence on unrecorded expertise highlights a paradox. The very measures taken to protect advanced knowledge can be what ultimately doom it to extinction. Understanding these cycles does more than explain the past. It holds a mirror to our present. Our own civilization is built on staggering specialization and dense interdependency. The silicon chip in your hand is the endpoint of a global supply chain and layers of abstract knowledge that very few individuals comprehend in their entirety. We store our collective memory digitally, on servers and in clouds, formats that could become unreadable to future generations as hardware and software evolve. This is not a prediction of doom, but a call for mindful stewardship. It asks us to value not just innovation, but the preservation and democratization of the knowledge that innovation produces. It urges us to support diverse, decentralized ways of recording and sharing understanding, from open source code to robust educational systems. So what does this journey through 30 ancient inventions ultimately tell us? It rewrites history from a simple story of ascent into a far richer, more human tapestry of brilliance, forgetfulness, and rediscovery. It challenges the arrogant notion that our modern world is the pinnacle of all that has ever been. Instead, we see ourselves as part of a long, intermittent conversation, one where voices from the distant past can still startle us with their clarity and insight. They remind us that ingenuity is a constant human trait, but its preservation is a fragile cultural achievement. The next time you flip a light switch, check your GPS, or even glance at a clock, remember, you are not just using modern conveniences. You are touching the latest chapter in a very old story, one that has known many pauses, but whose next line is always ours to write. This stunning legacy of forgotten genius is not a collection of lucky accidents. It is the clear, enduring signature of the human mind at work. Each steam engine, each astrolabe, each self-healing concrete formula represents a triumph of systematic inquiry. These were not stumbled upon, they were built through observation, through trial and error, and through a deep desire to understand and shape the world. From the grid of Mohenjo-Daro to the gears of the Antikythera mechanism, We see engineering prowess emerging independently across continents and millennia, a shared language of ingenuity spoken in stone, bronze, and fire. This panoramic view fundamentally challenges a comforting hubris, the idea of modern exceptionalism. We often imagine ourselves standing at the summit of all human achievement, but history reveals we are simply walking a well-trodden path, rediscovering peaks that others reached long before us. Innovation is not the exclusive property of our Silicon Age. It is a recurring, innate human trait, a spark that has flared brightly in countless dark skies throughout our story. Let this knowledge settle not as a footnote but as a lens. Let it inspire a profound humility, a recognition that the brilliant minds of the past were every bit as capable as our own. Let it also ignite a fiercer curiosity. What we are inventing today, from artificial intelligence to genetic editing, may have conceptual echoes in lost libraries or unexcavated workshops. And conversely, the sublime technologies that vanished, the true composition of Greek fire or the full scope of Alexandrian mechanics, whisper that our greatest discoveries might still be ahead of us, waiting in the past to be found again. If this re-examination of history has reshaped your sense of time and human potential, consider joining this ongoing search. Subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries that rewrite our understanding. And we would love to hear your thoughts. Which of these 30 ancient inventions left you the most amazed? Share your choice in the comments below.